Welcome to the show. You have found Mason Street Retirement Insights, where every week we turn to our resident financial advisor, Sean Mason. He is the founder of Mason Street Wealth Management right here in Fresno. And he's been helping clients retire with confidence for years. He'd love to do the same for you. So he is here today to break down some of the biggest retirement topics for us. Sean, I came across a statistic this week that blew my mind. I knew I wanted to talk to you about it. It said, if you put 100 people in a room and you asked how many of you have saved $1 million for retirement, only 3 hands are going to go up. Only about 3% of Americans have gotten there, Sean. So let's talk about that other 97%. Could you compare the couple for us who has saved $1 million or more for retirement and the couple that saved, let's say, $500,000? How different does the planning look for those two scenarios?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And there are many studies that suggest, how much a family has to have saved to support their lifestyle in retirement. And these studies are typically based on salaries during their working years. Fidelity suggests saving equal to 10 times their annual salary. Merrill Lynch, they're a bit more aggressive. They're suggesting 12 times salary. And sure, there's some relevance to these calculations, but there are so many variables in each family's situation. Of course, there's more to the story. We have to consider the amount of pension and Social Security monies available, the tax treatment of the savings and lifestyle expectations, healthcare concerns, legacy desires. There's a lot of variables that need to be planned for. Tax legislation risk, as we just talked about, market fluctuations, early passing of a spouse. And Casey, you asked a great question. Is the planning different based on the amount of savings? Mm-hmm. It really depends on the situation. Jim and Mary, who we've been working with for over 10 years, they retired with just over $600,000 in their 401ks. And that money is going to be passed to the kids because they have over $20,000 a month in federal pension income.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then compared to Art and Verna, who we've also been working with for over 10 years, they retired with $2.5 million, half in 401ks and half in a taxable brokerage account with no pension benefits, and they don't have kids. And so those two financial plans are completely different, not because the amount of savings is different, because all the variables are so different. Jim and Mary, they don't have to be so concerned about running out of money or market fluctuations. Their retirement plan is more focused on taxation on their IRAs during their lifetime because of RMDs, and then the inheritance tax their kids will incur. And then we did position some long-term care strategies using a portion of their annual pension income. But for Art and Verna, on the other hand, their plan is heavily focused on income to support their lifestyle desires, with taxation, market volatility, inflation, all being high on the priority list. And then we also position a portion of their assets in a private pension strategy, providing them with a guaranteed income for the rest of their life to supplement Social Security covering their necessity expenses.
That's a great example, Sean, that every person's situation is different. And I think that's really important for people to remember, because I think it's really easy to think if I'm not at that million saved, I failed. But we know that's just not true. There are smart ways to make what you've worked hard for work hard for you in your retirement. So for those 97%, Sean, who aren't at that million mark yet, do we set our sights on getting to that million? Is that what we need to be working on? What's the most important thing here? What should be the main concern for retirees who are in this 97%?
Yeah, and for so many people, it's tough to try and figure out what should be focused on. So many of us are so focused on the savings amount that we have versus income in retirement. Look, income is what's going to drive lifestyle and quality of life. We know that through our working years. That's always been the case, and that's going to be the case in retirement. It's not the $1 million that we've saved up. It's the income that we generate from the $1 million is what's going to be key. And in retirement, income strategies have to be on point. Income strategies are different depending on what type of person we are. Risk tolerance comes into play. Some people are willing to take more risk and subject their income from market gains, while others need more guarantees. And so the strategy is going to be key in generating income in retirement. You know, the difference, I've actually studied multiple scenarios where the family who retired with $500,000 generated more lifetime income, I should say more spendable lifetime income, than the family who retired with $1 million. The income plan, the tax plan, the investment plan, it's so important to understand how intertwined they all are and how each piece of the puzzle is affecting other pieces. You can have the greatest income plan. You know, I got all my spreadsheets and I've got my income figured out based on the savings that I have and my Social Security. The tax plan, I have this great CPA and we've got a great tax plan put together, and I've been doing investments on my own, or I've got a guy. You know, everybody's got a guy for the investment plan, and each one of those plans are so great. But once you put them all together, sometimes they don't work so great. Sometimes they're not as efficient as they need to be.
I want to talk a little bit about what is on people's minds right now. There was a recent study by Natixis I was looking at, and it had the top questions that people are asking their retirement planners right now. And the top answers included, coming in at number one, am I protected from a downturn? 72% of retirees are asking their advisors that right now. Second place was, what do I need to do to outpace inflation? 67% are asking that. And then tied for third is, am I going to meet my goals? Loaded question there. And how do I preserve and pass on what I've built? So I'm curious about your thoughts on this list, Sean, and if there are any that you can add that your clients are asking you right now.
Yes, these are all questions we get from families that come in, especially for an initial consultation. Will we have enough to pay for long-term care services? Or how can we reduce taxes? We're worried about RMDs. Do we need life insurance? And I would say that probably the question that's on most people's mind right now is a concern of a market correction, and especially those who are relying on the media for financial advice. Mm-hmm. You know, right? The market continues to reach all-time highs. You know, it's happening month after month. And what I mean by that is the price of stock is higher than it's ever been. And we all know, buy low and sell high. And this causes conflict for individuals trying to manage their own portfolios, and understandably so. But, you know, we have to recognize that there's a lot more that goes into market analysis than just prices. And a suggestion is that if you don't have that knowledge, you might want to revisit whether or not you should be the family investment manager. And Casey, I should note that market volatility is not necessarily a concern to families who know their investments are structured based on their income plan.
I want to focus on that. Do I have enough to reach my goals question? Because that one, you know, kind of made me laugh out loud, because like I said, what a loaded question that is. So when somebody sits down with you, Sean, and they ask, do I have enough to meet my goals? Am I okay? What do you look at first to try and formulate an answer for them? What 2 or 3 numbers do you look at to give them a response, or to formulate an idea of even where they're at?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'll tell you, probably throughout the year, that is probably the biggest question. You know, people come in and they have all types of concerns. And, you know, the crust always comes down to, I cannot run out of money. I cannot allow myself to run out of money. That's probably the biggest fear. And do I have enough? Have I saved enough? You know, the answer to that is always going to be about financial planning. It's all going to be about having that comprehensive financial plan in place. But there's a lot of variables, of course, lifestyle expectations, taxes, market volatility. But, you know, when people have their investments structured based on their income strategy, it really gives them a sense of security. So what I mean by that is most people, when they get closer to the retirement age, they believe that they should start to dial back risk. And the reason they're feeling that way is because the older that we are, the less time that we have to make up for any market corrections. That's called time horizon. And most people base their time horizon on their own age. But I would suggest taking another kind of perspective and think about that each individual dollar has its own time horizon. What I mean by that is you can retire with your $1 million at 65 years old, and we know that we're not going to spend all of our $1 million in the first 5 years. We're going to run out if we do that. Of course not. And we're also not going to spend it in the first 10 years. If we think about that, we can kind of earmark money for different years throughout our life. This bucket is for 5 years. The next bucket is for the 10th year. The next bucket is for the 15th year. We can actually invest based on the time horizon of each dollar. If we have a proper investment plan in place, the dollars that we're going to spend in the first year or two are going to be invested different than the dollars we're going to be spending in 10 to 15 years. Of course, we can be a lot more aggressive with dollars that we're going to spend later in life than earlier. And when we have these types of strategies set up and people understand that these concerns that they have are taken care of, by the way, these concerns should be addressed periodically. It's not just one time, set it and let it go. We've got to reevaluate at least once a year, and doing that is going to give families that security that those concerns are addressed. And then what happens is the questions that they have, they become about the fun stuff. You know, Jeremy gave me a call, I think it was last week, and he asked me if buying a brand new RV would interrupt his financial situation. A couple weeks earlier, Sam and Irene, they've been planning a trip to Japan for the last 6 months. And Irene asked me when they were in a review, she asked, we're thinking about taking the entire family on the trip to Japan with us. And we're talking 13 extra people. And
wow.
And what a trip, right?
Oh, how do I get into that family, Sean?
Yeah, let's go. But she's asking me if we can model the additional expense in their plan, and we did, and it showed that they've got no issues. But, you know, the starting point of them even dreaming like that is knowing that those original concerns, those foundational concerns are taken care of, and they don't have to worry about that stuff. You know, the questions turn into fun, and these types of questions, this is what gives me so much joy, because it shows the confidence that they have in their planning and that their lifestyle is going to be what they expect, and it allows them to start dreaming a bit more.
Yeah.
And having that comprehensive plan is really what gives them the freedom to be able to do that.
Listen, if you are listening and you are dreaming, you've got goals, you've got plans, but you're wondering if your plan covers all the bases, protection, inflation, goals, legacy, I want you to understand not to leave it to chance. Take this as your sign to talk with a trusted advisor. Get a clear, complimentary, introductory retirement planning assessment with Sean. 559-847-0039 is how you reach us. Sean has set those spots aside on his calendar exclusively for our radio listeners. So I highly encourage you to take advantage, because he is also offering that Roth conversion analysis to our first 5 callers today as well. And quick reminder, this is an offer for our listeners with $500,000 or more saved for their retirement. No obligation attached. So you've truly got nothing to lose with this and everything to gain. 559-847-0039 is how you do it, or head online. We're at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. You just click that Contact Us tab at the top right and share your information with us, and we'll have a Mason Street teammate reach out directly to you. One more time, get connected with us. Dial 559-847-0039 or head online to MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. That is going to do it for us this week here on Mason Street Retirement Insights. As always, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back next week, same time, same place, with more great insight from Sean Mason, president of Mason Street Wealth Management. Take care.
Mason Street Wealth Management, MSWM, is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by MSWM on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Motivate Investments. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. Investment advisory services are offered through Motivate Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Sean A. Mason, California, insurance license number 0B54860. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Motivate Investments. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. MSWM is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if MSWM is licensed in your state, please call 559-892-0002.